Hey there, chess enthusiast. Ready to dive deep into some serious strategy?
Always up for a good chess chat. What are we digging into today?
We're tackling Lev Polyevsky's The Art of Defense in Chess.
Now that's a classic. Defense can be a real game changer if you know how to use it right.
That's what I'm hoping to uncover. This quote from Polyevsky really got me thinking. It stands to reason that by defense alone, the present-day chess throne cannot be won.
It's so true though, isn't it? You can't just hide behind your pieces and hope for the best, especially in modern chess.
It's like defense has become this almost forgotten art.
In a way, yeah. I mean, think about how much the game has changed since Steinitz. Back then, a more passive defense might have worked against less experienced players, but not anymore.
Everyone's bringing their A game now. So much theory, so many aggressive openings.
Exactly. You need a strong offense if you want to compete at that level. But that doesn't mean defense is irrelevant.
Right, it's finding the balance.
Exactly that. Neglecting your defenses is like leaving the back door open. Even the most brilliant attack won't matter if your position crumbles from within.
Oof, yeah. Like that game Polyevsky talks about, Spassky versus Karpov in '74.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
You'd think Spassky, a world champion known for his attacking style, would have had defense down pat.
It just goes to show even the slightest lapse in defensive thinking can be costly.
For sure. And Botvinnik's analysis of that game really highlights this. There's this one move where Spassky chooses to activate his bishop instead of using it to defend a key pawn. It seemed like a small thing at the time.
But those small things can snowball, can't they?
Absolutely. Botvinnik argues that this subtle shift ultimately costs Spassky the entire game.
It's a classic example of how important it is to think defensively, even when you're on the attack. Because here's the thing. There's always a way to defend in chess.
You really think so? Even when it seems hopeless?
I'm convinced of it. It might not be obvious, it might take years of analysis to uncover, but it's there. It's not a question of if, but when and how. And that's what separates the good defenders from the great ones. They're not just reacting to threats, they're anticipating them, planning for them, and most importantly, recognizing the opportune moment to turn the tide.
So we're not just talking about building impenetrable walls, right?
Yep.
It's about knowing when to hold back, when to push, when to use those defensive moves to actually gain the upper hand.
You've got it. And what I love about Polyevsky is how he breaks down these defensive weapons, these different tools we can use.
Okay, well, walk me through it. What's in this chess defender's toolbox?
Well, let's start with disarmament. Imagine this. Your opponent is coming at you full force, pieces everywhere. But instead of panicking, you start making these calculated sacrifices, exchanges. You start simplifying the board.
So you're strategically giving up material.
Right. And by doing that, you're neutralizing their attack, often leading to a drawish endgame.
Interesting. So it's not always about going for the win. Sometimes it's about minimizing the damage. Who were some of the players who used this well?
Capablanca was a master of this. Look at the 27 World Championship against Alekhine, the 15th game. Alekhine is building this powerful attack, but Capablanca doesn't take the bait. He steers the game towards an end game where Alekhine has an extra pawn, but he can't actually force a win.
It's like strategically diffusing a bomb. You're not fighting fire with fire, you're taking away the fuel. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But what about those situations where simplifying just isn't an option?
Sometimes you have to hunker down and weather the storm. That's trench warfare.
Ah, so this is the stubborn defense.
You could say that. Think of it as pure resilience. You're parrying every threat, but you're not trying to get too clever. No premature counterattacks.
Right. You're just trying not to make things worse.
Exactly. Like Polyevsky talks about the Smyslov-Botvinnik match in '54. Botvinnik, even with black, he weathers Smyslov's initial attack and manages to equalize.
It's like choosing your battles, right?
Yeah.
Especially in those complex positions where one wrong move could be disastrous. So when's it the right time to shift gears, to go from defense to attack?
That's where turning the tide comes in. Timing is everything here. You've held your ground, you've minimized the damage, and now you're waiting for that one little crack in your opponent's defenses, that moment when they overextend, when their aggression becomes their weakness.
And that's when you strike.
Precisely. And who do you think comes to mind when we talk about this?
Capablanca.
Capablanca. The game against Molina in 1911 is a perfect example. Capablanca is on the back foot initially, but he defends so tenaciously that Molina gets lulled into this false sense of security, and then, bam, Capablanca launches this devastating counterattack and wins the game.
Incredible. So it's not just about surviving, it's about turning that defensive pressure into an opportunity, a chance to win.
Exactly. And that's what I think makes chess defense so fascinating. It's an art form in itself.
It's like there's this whole psychological layer to chess defense, like a mental game within the game.
Absolutely. And Miloszewski really gets into that. Every move, even a defensive one, it affects your opponent's thinking.
Right, like you're in their head a little bit.
Exactly. He talks about blockade, and it's a great example of this. Nimzovich. Now, there was a chess mind.
Wasn't he the one who really pushed that idea?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about blocking a piece. It's about this strategic paralysis, You're basically shutting down their whole plan.
So you're not just building a wall, you're cutting off all their escape routes, making them uncomfortable.
Exactly. Polygaevsky, he gives this example from Nimzovich. Black actually has a material advantage, an extra piece and a pawn, but they're so blockaded they can barely move.
Wow, surrounded by their own pieces.
That's it. And the beauty is you don't have to be a grandmaster to use it. Even amateurs can use blockade to gain an edge.
It's like finding those pressure points and then just, leaning into them. So what other mind games does Polygaevsky talk about?
All right, get ready for this one. The king's active role in defense.
Wait, what? Usually you're trying to hide the king? Keep him safe.
Right. But Polygaevsky has these incredible examples like Steinitz, even a game from 47, Bronstein and Lisitsyn. The king becomes a defender.
No way, really. Comes out of hiding, joins the fight.
I know, right? Steps out from the back, controls key squares, even joins counterattacks.
That is wild. Like turning the most vulnerable piece into a source of strength. Okay, what else? You can't just leave me hanging with that.
All right. How about this? Fortresses.
Okay, now those sound interesting.
Right. Imagine a position so secure, so airtight that you're practically untouchable, even with less material.
Sounds almost impossible.
Polygaevsky uses the Kobaladze-Tsereteli game, 1970. The defender, less material, but he builds this fortress, and it holds, no matter what the attacker throws at it.
It's like those old sieges, where the defending army, they might be outnumbered, but the terrain, the walls, it gives them the advantage.
That's a great analogy.
Unbreakable. I love those moments in chess, those aha moments. Even in a loss, there can be so much brilliance. But speaking of brilliant and surprising, this talk of fortresses reminds me, what about traps?
Ah, yes, traps. People think they're cheap tricks, but a good trap, it takes real understanding of your opponent.
You've got to know how they think, right? What they're going to go for.
Exactly. Are they greedy for material, prone to rushing an attack? There's this great game, Fine Unovich, 1937. Black sacrifices their queen.
Whoa, the queen. That's a bold move.
Right. But it's a trap, leads to this forced sequence, and black wins.
It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, and they can't help but follow it.
That's a great way to put it.
Polygaevsky even talks about a trap Kasparov could have played. He was behind in material, but he could have forced a stalemate.
Wow, I don't remember that one. See, that's what I love about these classics. There's always something new to discover.
Right. It really shows you those opportunities are always there, even when the situation looks bleak. Which, speaking of, stalemate itself is like the ultimate psychological move, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. People underestimate stalemate all the time. But remember, it's a draw, even if your opponent has you completely outmatched material-wise.
Yeah, it's like this last ditch, if I'm going down, you're coming with me kind of thing.
Exactly. Polygaevsky loved Reshevsky's games, and Reshevsky was famous for his stalemate escapes. Just incredible resourcefulness.
So sometimes the best defense is, forcing your opponent to have no moves at all. Chess is a game of contradictions sometimes.
It really is, and that's what Polygaevsky gets at, I think. Defense isn't just about survival, it's about opportunity.
It's about recognizing that every move can shift the balance, even the quiet ones.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say, this deep dive into Polygaevsky's work has been eye-opening. I know I'm going to be looking at my chess game differently from now on.
Me too. It's always good to revisit the classics.
And the best part is, it's not just about chess, is it? It's about strategy in all aspects of life. So to our listeners out there, what area of your life could use a little more strategic, maybe even counterattacking, defense? That's something to ponder, isn't it? Until next time, everyone, keep those minds sharp and those defenses strong.